according to Tobias. He and Ed Boon had envisioned a fighting game similar to Data East's Karate Champ, but featuring large digitized characters. They had put the proposal to Midway, who rejected it. Instead, Midway were looking to make an action game based on the upcoming movie Universal Soldier. The game was to feature a digitized version of martial arts film star Jean-Claude Van Damme, but he was already in negotiations with another developer for a video game that eventually fell through. With the meteoric success of Street Fighter II, Midway had a change of heart and tasked Boon and Tobias with developing a new combat game, which they wanted released within 12 months. The initial development team consisted of only 4 people with a budget of $1 million. Despite Van Damme's game deal falling through, he would live on as a parody in the character of Johnny Cage, the two sharing the same initials. One of Cage's special moves, the groin punch, was taken from a scene in Bloodsport.
Fighting games have proven themselves to be strong collectors suitable for a wide range of locations. They embody the most attractive elements of the arcade experience: characters endowed with mythic powers, full player control, secret moves, and the kind of unbridled, head-to-head competition that compels repeat buy-in. Now from Midway comes Mortal Kombat. It captures the most popular elements of the fighting game and adds more control, more powerful characters, more depth, more secret moves, and advanced digitized graphics, delivering the most realistic fighting action available.
Boon later said, "Since the beginning, one of the things that separated us from other fighting games is the crazy moves we've put in it, like fireballs and all the magic moves." According to Tobias, the game's ultra-violent content had not been originally intended and was only implemented gradually as the development progressed. The concept of fatalities in particular evolved from the dizzied mechanic in earlier fighting games. Boon said that he hated the dizzied mechanic, but that it was fun to have one's opponent get dizzied and get in a free hit. Boon and Tobias decided they could eliminate the aggravation of getting dizzied by having it occur at the end of the fight, after the outcome had already been decided. Footage for the game's digitized characters was filmed with Tobias' personal Hi8 camcorder. The final arcade game used 8 megabytes of graphics data, with each character having 64 colors and around 300 frames of animation. The team had difficulty settling on a name for the game. Ed Boon has stated that for 6 months during development, nobody could come up with a name nobody didn't hate. Some of the names suggested were Kumite, Dragon Attack, Death Blow, and Fatality. One day, someone had written down Combat on the drawing board for the names in Boon's office, and someone wrote a K over the C, according to Boon, just to be kind of weird. Pinball designer Steve Ritchie was sitting in Boon's office, saw the word Combat, and said to him, "Why don't you name it Mortal Kombat?" A name that Boon stated just stuck. Mortal Kombat was developed in 10 months between 1991 and 1992, with a test version seeing limited release halfway through the development cycle. As a demo version of the game, which featured only 6 characters, became internally popular within Midway offices, the team was given more time to work on it, resulting in the addition of Sonya to the roster. The launch of Mortal Kombat for home consoles by Acclaim Entertainment was one of the largest video game launches of the time. TV commercials heralded the simultaneous release of all 4 home versions of the game: SNES, Genesis, Game Boy, and Game Gear, on September 13, 1993, a date dubbed Mortal Monday. In the same year, a comic book, Mortal Kombat Collector's Edition, was written and illustrated by the game's designer John Tobias and made available through mail order, describing the backstory of the game in greater detail. Mortal Kombat, the album by the Immortals featuring techno music, was released in May 1994. It features 2 themes for the game: Techno Syndrome and Hypnotic House, as well as themes written for each character. While the SNES version's visuals and audio were more arcade accurate than those of the Genesis version, it has less precise controls and, due to Nintendo's family-friendly policies, replaces the blood with sweat and most of the fatalities with less violent, finishing moves. The sweat effect, which was a palette coloration added after Nintendo's decision to censor the game, could be reverted to the original red blood color via a Game Genie code. On the Genesis version, the blood and uncensored fatalities were available via a cheat code. The DOS game is the most accurate port of the arcade version in terms of graphics and gameplay. It was first released on floppy disk and later re-released on CD-ROM, with that release upgraded with the original arcade music and sound effects.
A horrifying possibility for parents who can't believe the game makers are fantasizing about decapitation and murder.
I don't think they'll have this at home, no.
You don't think so?
A little bit too violent.
You look a little startled.
Yeah, it's a little too violent, I think.
That's pretty bad. That's just plain gross.
Furthermore, advanced technology allows digitized video of real martial arts actors, making the action look real and not as cartoony. In fact, Mortal Kombat so shocked the managers at a nationwide arcade chain that they tried a sanitized version of the game. Instead of chopping the opponent's head off, he simply disappears. Sales dropped 40%.
They came up and said, what'd you do to the game? It's no fun anymore.
Kids are saying chill out to worried parents.
I think TV personally influences more than a video game. A video game is a video game.
The bottom line, parents wonder if kids can separate fantasy from the real thing.
Wait until they get out in a situation where they're fighting, and then they'll think about this and try to make it real.
An Amiga version was released in early 1994 in Europe only, with graphics based on the Genesis version, controls limited to either 1 or 2 action buttons, and a minimal soundtrack. The game would go on to sell 3 million copies worldwide in its first 3 weeks of release. In the United States, it was the top-selling Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo game in January 1994. Mortal Kombat was also one of America's top 2 highest-grossing arcade games of 1993. Mortal Kombat was one of many violent video games that came under scrutiny in the early 90s, generating controversy among parents and politicians. Hearings on video game violence and the corruption of society were held in the United States. The result of the hearings was that the entertainment software industry was given 1 year to form a working rating system, or the federal government would intervene and create its own. Mortal Kombat would go on to spawn multiple sequels and spin-offs, including a movie. Mortal Kombat is considered by critics to be one of the greatest video games ever made. It spawned numerous sequels and spin-offs. The most recent installment, released in 2023, features a reboot of the series. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing.